Just waiting for the cue from Wes that we're live.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, I'm like, this is a very long 10
It
seconds.
is. Yeah. Just waiting for Wes. We're live.
Welcome to the COVID313 Coalition for Families and Students. I hope you all are joining us from your phones outside in this beautiful summer weather. We are so excited to be here with you today. I'm Christine Bell. I'm honored to serve as the Executive Director of Urban Neighborhood Initiatives and a really proud member of this coalition. We have a really great town hall for you today. But before we get started, we want to make sure that everyone gets to the right place. And we want you all to keep in mind that we are taking your questions live. So if you have any questions or comments, please drop them in the Facebook chat. We've got Lindsay and Brooke and a couple of other folks on our team waiting to hear from you. So why don't you tell them right now where you're joining us from? We are translating the town hall into ASL and Spanish. So if our ASL interpreter, who is starting with us? Hi, Becca. Welcome. Thank you so much for being with us today. So if you are joining us today, Becca, and who is your partner today, Becca? Ian. Okay. Katsian is also with us. They will be interpreting for you today, and they'll be interpreting on the screen throughout the webinar. There will also be a recording of this video with closed captioning for later viewing. And I'd love to welcome Cristina Guzman onto the screen so that she can share how our Spanish-speaking families and students can listen to the Spanish interpretation. Cristina?
Sí, buenos días. Bienvenidos a la charla de COVID313. Para escuchar en español, pueden ir al Facebook de Urban Neighborhood Initiatives, o UNI, como se dice, o pueden ir hay un enlace en el chat para que estén con nosotros y yo voy a traducir. Gracias.
Thank you so much, Christina. It's wonderful to have you with us again today. So for our experts today, please remember,
para nuestros expertos hoy.
Please remember to speak slowly for our translators. They want to make sure they're translating the important information you are sharing correctly. Also, remember to turn off your cameras when you're not speaking to ensure that the ASL interpreter can be seen, and mute yourself when you're not speaking.
Christine,
Terry Whitfield, yes?
we're not live.
Okay. Are we recording on YouTube?
No, hold on one second.
We are, hello, we are live,
Yeah,
guys.
we are live.
Okay.
Brooke, I can see it.
It's live on One Detroit and I'm cross. You guys? Oh,
We hear you,
Great.
Colleen. Yes, we are live. Something's going on with Brooke. 7 on text wax.
Awesome.
okay.
We're live, everyone. In case you were worried we were not live, we are live. All right. So Terry Whitfield is our timekeeper today, and he will chat you your remaining time if you go over myself or my co-moderator. And I'm excited that we have a new co-moderator, Nikki. She will, her or I will come up to the screen and gently remind you to wrap up. Like I said, this town hall is jam-packed with, I think, some really important topics that are on top of mind for so many of us. We'll be talking about pride and Roe versus Wade and what that means for all of us. We'll also be talking about vaccines for children under the age of 5. We will have somebody here from YDRC to give us some updates on summer activities in case you're still looking for something for your kids to do this summer, like I am. And we'll obviously wrap up with announcements. So I'd like to ask Nikki to come onto the screen and join me because I am going to pass the mic to her because we are going to start with Dr. Cunningham, who's going to talk about child vaccines. So Nikki?
Hi, thanks, Christine. As Christine said, I'm new to the co-moderation. Thanks everybody for welcoming me. I'm going to be introducing Dr. Dennis Cunningham, an MD from Henry Ford Health Systems. And to start us off, Dr. Cunningham, thanks again for joining. Can you talk to us a little bit about the updates on vaccines for children under 5? And specifically, we've seen a lot of questions in our community around 6 months and up for the vaccine.
Well, that's a perfect segue. We now have 2 vaccines that are approved for use in children as young as 6 months of age. We have both the Pfizer vaccine and we have the Moderna vaccine. They both are very similar, exactly the same as the doses that we give to older children and adults. It's just a lower dose, same components. In the studies, they looked pretty good. The efficacy is pretty decent, more than decent. Side effects were very well tolerated, and I'm really excited about that. While children overall tend to not become as ill from COVID, they certainly like to share their germs with parents, grandparents, and other people. So by vaccinating these young children, it's another way we can curtail the amount of COVID that we're seeing.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So are you aware of any locations in the Detroit area that are currently administering those or starting to administer them?
So I can tell you that Henry Ford Primary Care Clinics, we have already started to offer these vaccines to our youngest patients. You can also go online. If you do a Google search for Vaccine Finder or go to vaccinefinder.org, it'll give you a list of different places where you can get the vaccine. We have been able to send patients to pharmacies. But under Michigan law, if you're under 3, pharmacies aren't allowed to vaccinate them. So you will probably need to either go to your doctor's office or go to a health department that has a clinic. But Vaccine Finder is really the best way to find the closest location to you.
Okay, awesome. Vaccine Finder seems like a really awesome tool. For another question that we had from our community, can you talk a little bit more about like PCR and rapid testing accuracy? We're seeing a lot of comments and clients in our respective agencies come and ask, you know, I had symptoms for a week. I didn't test positive until after a week of symptoms. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So the PCR were actually, these are tests that are done in a laboratory, usually a hospital lab or some commercial lab such as a Quest or LabCorp. And it's actually looking for the genetic material in the COVID-19 virus. It's the most sensitive, meaning you're most likely to find the virus if it's there. The downside is it takes a little bit of time. It might be a day. The test itself is fast, but you have to send it to the lab. The lab has to process it, and they're going to run multiple samples at once. The home tests are what we call rapid antigen, and that just is a fancy way of saying it's a quick test at home that we're looking for a protein on the COVID virus. The at-home tests are going to be most sensitive 2 days before you develop symptoms and the first 3 days of symptoms. That's when you'll have the most virus in your nose, and that's when the test is most likely to find it. If you have symptoms, the rapid test is about 80% to 90% sensitive, meaning if you're infected, 80 to 90% chance it's going to find the virus. Compared to the PCR, that number is more like 97%. If you do not have any symptoms at all, the PCR is still very good, but those at-home tests are a lot less sensitive. Maybe only 40% of people without symptoms will be detected.
Okay, so that leads me into my follow-up question. Are you recommending that people get a PCR over a rapid antigen test done? Or when is it more appropriate for the PCR test?
I think it is perfectly fine if you're feeling sick to get a rapid test. And if it's positive, you have your answer. There's no need to repeat it. If you're sick and the rapid test doesn't detect it, it could still be COVID. That's when you might want to go get a PCR either at one of the pharmacies, a health department, or at your doctor's office. And it's important to know if you do have COVID, because if you're at high risk for COVID complications, there's different medicines we can give to prevent people from having to come in the hospital and keeping them healthier at home.
Thank you. And then if you are sick and you haven't seemed to be getting better and your symptoms seem to be getting worse, when is the opportune, or when is the best time to ask for antiviral medications from your doctor?
So the antiviral medicines, and we have 2 of them right now that are available. The best time to start them is early in the illness before you get super sick. Typically, people get, if you're going to become really sick with COVID, it's usually around day 5. That's when people wind up coming to the hospital or emergency department. So if you have COVID and you're high risk, either because of age or you have medical risks, by all means, call your doctor or your nurse practitioner early to get on those medications. Sooner is better. And certainly anyone who feels like they're getting worse, if you feel that you're having shortness of breath, you're having trouble walking around because you don't feel well and you're just struggling to breathe, by all means, you need to be seen very quickly.
Thank you. I don't see any, I'm looking for questions from the audience. As far as right now, I don't see any questions from our audience. So I am going to pass it over back to Christine to introduce our speaker for Roe v. Wade.
The only thing that I would mention real quick,
yeah,
if you Google Henry Ford COVID, we have some webpage that I helped work on. It talks about the vaccines, the antivirals. They're frequently asked questions as well. So if any of that is helpful to you, feel free to use it.
Dr. Cunningham, can I ask you a quick question? For those of us that might be a little bit nervous about getting our under 5-year-olds vaccinated, can you talk a little bit about how the vaccine works, how it differs from the vaccine for 5 and up? And then maybe a little bit about why did it take so long to get the 2 vaccines approved by the FDA?
Sure. So the vaccines are exactly the same as what we give adults or the over 5 kids. It just the dose itself has to be changed. For instance, the Pfizer vaccine, if you're an adult, you get what's called 30 micrograms of the active ingredient. If you're 5 to 12, you would get 15. If you're under 5, you might get as low as 3 micrograms or 1/10 of the dose. And that's just because they're smaller. They don't need quite as much. But the vaccine works the exact same way. It's the same mechanism. There's been hundreds of millions of doses of these vaccines given throughout the world right now. And the safety profile is pretty impressive. Typically, when you do vaccine trials, you start with adults and then you work your way back. Children are what we consider a vulnerable population, especially the 6-month-old. They can't say, yeah, I'm okay with it or I don't want it. So we usually go with adults. Probably early spring, or maybe it was late winter, Pfizer had done a trial and they found that the data wasn't great in terms of the protection. It was safe. So they had to redo their trials. So instead of giving 2 doses like we do to teenagers and adults, they make it 3 doses. And that actually made the protection shoot up great. So that's why it took longer for Pfizer. Moderna just didn't start the young kid trial soon enough to get it any earlier. So it was really, the FDA can only approve or look at the data once it's submitted by the manufacturers, but the data looks good for both those vaccines.
I'm sure you'd recommend that folks should go and get the vaccine as soon as possible. I know there are some parents that are thinking if it's going to be similar to the adult vaccine where you're going to need a booster. I know there are some parents that are going to wait closer to when school starts. Is that a rational strategy, do you think?
It is a rational strategy, and I understand why they're doing that. I can tell you, I just looked at the COVID numbers this morning. They're updated usually on Wednesday nights, and our COVID numbers are increasing again in the state. So I can't tell you for sure when this is going to peak. If they're vaccinated now, they're going to get at least a good 6 months of protection, if not longer. And we're almost in July. So essentially that's going to take us till December or January. So getting vaccinated now should get you through the first half of the school year. So I would really encourage parents get the vaccine. Remember, it's 2 doses. You get a dose now. If you're doing Pfizer, the second dose is in 21 days, and the third dose is 2 months after that second dose. Moderna is 2 doses for the young kids, separated by about 28 days. So you're not even going to be fully vaccinated until end of July, early August, and then you're going to be protected at least another 6 months.
Great. And then one last question for parents. What should we look for in terms of side effects, if any, for these vaccines in our most little ones?
They may have a low-grade fever. They may be a little bit more fussy than usual. They'll still play and eat and drink. They just might not be their usual perky self. But that's really been most of what people have seen. They really tolerated the vaccine quite well. Little kids handle these side effects a whole lot better than adults do. I don't know why, but they're just tougher.
I think they're way more encouraged to play. So I feel like there has to be a lot between them and play. That's when you know they're really sick, I feel like, when they won't even get up to play. So
Agreed.
Yeah. Is there anything else, Dr. Cunningham, that you want to say to parents about these vaccines that you think it's really important for us to know as we make these decisions?
Just it's another way that we can protect our parents and grandparents. We know older adults are more at risk for COVID complications. We know kids don't always share their toys, but they love to share their germs. This is just one more way we can protect those around us who have weak immune systems.
Dr. Cunningham, it is always a pleasure to have you here with us to share your knowledge. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Yeah, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Hopefully it'll be talking about something else besides COVID, but
that would be wonderful.
We'll keep our fingers crossed for that. And Summer Foster is here, and she is going to talk with us about the impact of the Roe versus Wade decision made by the Supreme Court last Friday. So Summer, I would love it if you could give a brief introduction of yourself and your organization, and then you can get right to it. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Summer Foster, and I'm the co-executive director of Michigan Voices. Michigan Voices is an organization that works with other nonprofits across the state of Michigan on progressive issues. We convene a reproductive justice work group, and we have 35 partners that are working on reproductive justice issues. As you may know, the Supreme Court last Friday overturned Roe versus Wade. And in that decision, they basically took away constitutional protections for people to access an abortion. This has different impacts on folks all across the country, and really it depends on what state you're in. Depends on the level of protection that you have. In Michigan, we have a 1931 law that not only bans abortion, but criminalizes the procedure. And so what that means is if the 1931 ban was in effect, that providers of abortion care could be subject to criminal penalties. Right now, the 1931 ban is not in effect, thankfully, due to a temporary injunction based on a lawsuit filed by Planned Parenthood of Michigan. There is also another lawsuit that has been filed by Governor Gretchen Whitmer declaring the 1931 law unconstitutional, but that law hasn't been heard yet in the Supreme Court. The temporary injunction is, like I said, it's temporary. It's not a permanent solution to this problem, and there are attempts to roll back the injunction as we speak. The 1931 injunction has also spurred confusion across the state of Michigan. We've had large health systems say that they would abide by the 1931 law in confusion because they didn't know what it meant. They did not know about the temporary injunction. They did not know that they could continue legally to provide abortion care in Michigan. They have since walked that back a little bit. We've had prosecutors in a couple of counties who said that they would look at prosecuting abortion. And so we think this has a huge impact on patient care, and it stops people who need care from seeking services because they don't know what it means for them personally. I want to reiterate that abortion is currently legal in Michigan due to the temporary injunction. And if folks need to know how to seek care, they can reach out to independent providers like Northland Family Planning. They can reach out to Planned Parenthood. They can reach out to Reclaim, which is an abortion fund in Southeast Michigan that helps folks seek services. But there are many resources on the ground that can help folks who need care. So what do we do about this? Like I mentioned, there is the lawsuit that's been filed by Planned Parenthood, where there's the temporary injunction. That lawsuit is going to move forward, but we don't have any timeline on when that's going to happen. There's also the lawsuit that Governor Whitmer has put into the Michigan Supreme Court, challenging the constitutionality of the 1931 law. Again, we don't know when that lawsuit will be heard and when that will be settled. The Michigan House Democrats have filed legislation called the Women's Health Protection Act. That legislation is now stalled in the Michigan House, but I would urge people to read more about that and to contact their legislators and ask that to be voted on. We also have a coalition that's been formed between my organization, Michigan Voices, Planned Parenthood Advocates of Michigan, the ACLU of Michigan, and a number of other organizations that are collecting signatures right now to put the Reproductive Freedom for All Amendment on the ballot, which would invalidate the 1931 law and allow for people to make their decisions on parenting based on when and how they want to become a parent. It would allow people to access abortion. It would protect birth control, IVF, and sterilization. And so I urge people to read more about that amendment, to sign a petition. The petitions are due to the Board of Canvassers on July the 11th, but we're hoping to get those wrapped up and turned in for quality control over the weekend. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much for that, that overview. Summer, you said that in Michigan, the 1931 law criminalizes the procedure. So you talked about how the provider could face criminal charges. What about the woman?
So that's really unclear. There are a lot of legal experts that have differing views on whether the person seeking care would also be at legal risk. We do know that the law challenges not only surgical abortions, but it would challenge medication abortions. It would challenge people that have miscarriages under what could be deemed suspicious circumstances. And so a lot of that is really unclear and it's up in the air. But we know that in a lot of our communities, Black and Brown people, people with lower incomes, immigrants, folks in rural communities are at more risks when we add criminal penalties to what should be a safe medical procedure.
So there's been a couple of, so Beaumont rescinded it. Apparently the attorney general, or not the attorney general, the county attorney, I'm not getting his, in Kent County,
Yes.
has said, I'm not getting his title correct.
He's the county prosecutor.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm like, it's not the attorney general. The county prosecutor has said that regardless of the injunction, he is going to enforce the 1931 law. Can you talk a little bit about, is that allowed, and why is it allowed if there's an injunction?
So I will say unequivocally that the Attorney General has said that that is not allowed. And other prosecutors from other counties have also said that is not allowed. I think what we'll see in this really confusing time is people challenging to see what they can get away with. And I think that's one of the things that's happening with the prosecutor in Kent County. But I think it has an impact on people that are seeking care. And it also has an impact on doctors who need to give care and are wondering if they would be charged with the crime for doing so. And so really, this is just another attempt to control bodies of women, of trans people, of non-binary people who want to or need to seek abortion care or even certain contraceptive services.
So do you want to expand at all on how this decision impacts women's rights in general, and then any other rights that you feel like this potentially could impact, knowing that one of the Supreme Court justices has already called to relook at, to re-examine some other really important rulings, such as same-sex marriage?
I mean, one of the things that is incredibly scary that we are seeing in other states is, well, on Friday, there were people in abortion clinics who were there to seek services who were told right before they were to get their procedure that abortion had been outlawed and they had to go home and they had to figure out another way to get the care that they need. We've seen in other states where doctors have refused to prescribe some forms of contraceptives because it could be seen as an abortifacient. And so there are women who need to get certain birth control renewed who have not been able to get those services because doctors are scared to prescribe. We've seen in other states where there are women who need certain forms of arthritis medication or chemotherapy whose doctors are now rethinking their treatment because they don't want to be charged with a crime. And so all of this is just impacting people who really need care right now. The Supreme Court, Justice Thomas has previewed in his concurrence that not only are we challenging Roe, but we're also that they also need to look at challenging Griswold, which gave us the right to use contraceptives. It gave Lawrence, which allowed for folks to be in same-sex relationships, Obergefell, which allowed for same-sex marriage. And we know that that's not where they're going to stop. This is just the beginning. And so this is a time where we all need to band together and say that our rights and our futures are interconnected here. And we need to you know, just work together to make sure that we are protecting folks.
We have a couple of questions, or a few questions from the viewers. So you talked about the ballot initiative. How can Michiganders get involved in the ballot initiative?
Sure. So I would encourage people to go to reproductivefreedom.org and sign up to learn more about the ballot initiative to get on the volunteer list, number one. Number two, we still have a few more days left where we're collecting petition signatures. You can find out on the website a location to go to sign the petition so we can get this on the November ballot. We have to submit 425,000 signatures, valid signatures to the Board of Canvassers by July 11th. So we are collecting every potential signature that we can. And the ACLU of Michigan office on Woodward, I believe, is going to be open this weekend for people who want to stop by and sign. And the third thing is it's really important for people to talk to their friends and family members about why it's important to protect abortion care and reproductive freedom in Michigan. There has been a lot of stigma around abortion, and people don't necessarily like to talk about it, but we know that people get abortions for a variety of reasons. We know that people seek reproductive services for a variety of reasons, and we need to begin to have those conversations. And so talk to your friends and family members about what taking back these legal rights can mean to you. It can mean to your children, your grandchildren, and to their future.
Thank you for that. So this decision has been incredibly difficult to even process. So thank you for all the ways that we can get involved. And I just would like to add one that we need to remember that we need to send representatives to our government positions that represent our interests. And so remember to vote. We have a primary coming up in August and an election in November.
Absolutely.
So another viewer says, I saw a map that shows pictures of states that welcome women looking for abortion. Michigan was not colored on that map. Why is that?
It's because of a 1931 law, because it's not clear how long we will have the temporary injunction in place to protect abortion services. And so that would be why.
Okay. And then one last question. Where can people who need abortions go to learn how to safely get an abortion care right now? Should people in Kent County go somewhere else?
So I would encourage you to reach out to an independent abortion provider. I would encourage you to reach out to Planned Parenthood of Michigan or to Reclaim Fund to be able to direct you to the best place to seek abortion care within your county or where you live.
Okay. I was just double checking to make sure that was the last question. Summer, thank you so much for being here with us today and for the really important work that you do and your organization does. I am incredibly grateful for you in this moment. And so thank you so much for being here with us today. I am going to, I think that we are moving to talk with Lilian Reyes. So I am going to welcome Nikki back and pass the mic back to her. So Nikki, go ahead.
Thanks, Christine. And oh, I'm sorry, you guys all just disappeared. And thank you for Summer for giving us some really important information around Roe v. Wade. So I wanted to take time to welcome our speaker, Leliana Reyes. And forgive me, I'm scrolling up. Leliana is the director of the LGBTQ Youth Drop-In at Ruth Ellis Center. And so I wanted to just give you a few moments, Leliana, to introduce yourself, talk a little bit about what you do, and then jump into your presentation. Following that, we do have a few questions for you. So whenever you are ready to jump in.
Yes, give me 1 second.
Okay.
I'm having a little trouble with my phone. I don't know what's going on with technology, but my name is Liliana Angel Reyes. I am the director of the LGBTQ Youth Drop-In Space at the Ruth Ellis Center. The Ruth Ellis Center is a houseless serving agency that focuses on youth, mostly youth of color. as youth of color have the highest rates of homelessness and other issues when it comes to networking and interfacing with institutions that we have, like Medicaid, Medicare, housing, jobs, all of that stuff. I am not from Michigan. I'm not from Detroit. I'm from Saginaw. So I'm a transplant to Detroit for quite some time now. A lot of my work at the Ruth Ellis Center focuses on allowing youth to have one easy, basic, no strings attached services like showers, food boxes, entry into case management. And then the other part of it is to go deeper within the health realm of many things that the youth that we serve are interfacing or going through. So tobacco, HIV, substance abuse, specifically opioid risk reduction. In our services, in my program, we do focus on trauma-informed care, or we use trauma-informed care, anti-racism, to really create better opportunities so that our youth can live the best lives that they can live. And that also means not to continue to stigmatize them. So whatever's happening in other agencies sometimes can be really stigmatizing and insulting to the youth. So for instance, what we do at the Ruth Ellis Center, anytime we have a focus group, we give stipends, and not a $25 gift card, stipends. And we work with our funders to do that because we know economic justice is important, and you cannot keep taking knowledge from marginalized folks and giving them very little when the agency can get hundreds of thousands of dollars for grants. That's not fair. And so the Ruth Ellis Center understands that, and that's part of our anti-racism, trauma-informed approach to be really thoughtful. I am also the executive director for Trans Sisters of Color Project, which is a Metro Detroit nonprofit that that focuses on Black and Brown trans women or trans women of color in or from the city of Detroit. The reason that organization was needed is because for years, men, Black or brown gay men have had more access to resources and jobs than trans women. And trans women were mostly pigeonholed within sex work. And so our organization wanted to create an organization that focused on them with the understanding that people aren't lacking resources. They don't need job training. They don't need how to save money in a bank. That's insulting. They need resources. You can't tell me how to save money when I don't have any money. And so going off that, we do emergency assistance funds. We pay for a lot of the things that no one else pays for, like food or legal issues or funerals, because trans women of color have the highest rate of marginalized folks to die before the age of 35 violently, which means most of us will be, especially if we transition young, and for many Black and brown people, we transition very young, our life expectancy is about 30 to 35. So when I was saying my phone, my presentation is kind of all over the place because my phone isn't loading up. There were 2 questions, correct?
Yeah, we did have some questions for you, and I can just shoot right in and just have a conversation if that's easier for you. I see. I get your vibe, and I'm really liking it. So let's just. Oh yeah. Okay. So one of the first questions, and I think you touched a little bit on it, are what are the most pressing issues people should know about the LGBTQIA Detroit community?
Yeah, so I think one, you need to know that we are resilient, and that is a good and bad thing. Resilience means that we have overcome so much: housing insecurities, discrimination, unemployment. For instance, we work with people who literally go to work as their authentic self, and a manager says, "I hate that you're trans, you're fired." And that is legal in Michigan. To be very clear, it's legal in Michigan. And of course, you can, in the court of law, you can definitely push back, but it is more to do than if it was just illegal. Like, you can't do that too. I'm a brown person, I'm Mexican, you couldn't say that to me because that is illegal in Michigan through Elliott Larson. And so it is not here. So I think one, not having full legal rights for not being discriminated against as a trans or gender minority person. And I think that sometimes people don't know that someone can come in and say, "I hate that you're gay," and fire you. And that sounds ludicrous, but it is actually legal in Michigan. So one, we don't have enough legal rights in Michigan. And if you think about how the Supreme Court just overturned Roe v. Wade, you know that when you don't have something, or sometimes even when you do, but when something isn't really set in stone, whoever comes in, so the next governor, the next mayor, depending on the city, when they come in, they can change everything. And so then it's a whole upheaval. And so legal rights are one, that trans women of color and gender nonconforming people aren't seen as real people. And so they're not seen as valued. So there is a legal defense case. So often what happens is trans women of color are murdered by the people who are in love with them. And what happens is people are secretly in love with them, or secretly use them for sex, also are the ones that kill them. And if you notice that, it's not about tricking people. It's never been about tricking people. There's really very few research to show that people were actually tricked. Most trans women that were violently murdered, once the court case starts, you know that the person who murdered them was entangled or engaged with them for so long. So it wasn't a random person. And those people can literally say, I panicked. I didn't know that they were trans. I panicked. And that is a legal case that many people get off scotch-free, like, oh, well, it's panic. So I can't murder someone and go, oh, I panicked. I didn't know he was an angry person. I didn't know he would cheat at me. I would go to prison. But these people can get off because they're like, oh, this idea that trans people are tricking people, which is not true, has been used, and it is creating no justice. It's creating families to feel like, one, that a murderer is walking around, that a hate crime was done and nothing could be done, so they could do it again. So between the legal rights and the not being seen as a whole person are usually what we see the most, in addition to high rates of homelessness, unchecked mental health illness in the Black and Brown community are usually what we see.
Thank you for that information. That's all really new information to me. And it leads us into the next question, which just came from a community member who's listening, is what can allies do? What can we do?
Yes. I think that every person, every ally, and every person within the LGBTQ continuum, I think you have to think about what your power and privilege is. Some allies have money. Use your money. Some have time. Some have a voice. Anything that you can do to create more privilege for marginalized people is great. Voting is one of them, because everyone can do it from your home. So voting is one of them, especially when propaganda starts to come out about these big things. They're motivated by fear. And it's really interesting when you tell a person, do you want your loved one, you want your daughter to be raped in a bathroom by a man? You, of course, are going to say no. But that's often propaganda of something that's not real. So the idea, like trans bathrooms, is what I'm focusing on. So before, that was really big. The Elliot Larson thing is LGBT people are going to take over the world and do all this stuff, when really we just want discrimination. So one, as an ally, be thoughtful about the propaganda that's pushed towards marginalized or about marginalized communities. Black Lives Matter had a lot of anti-propaganda pushed. And I think it's important to sift through it to see what is really real and what is just based off fear that has no research. So there's really very few incidents, talking about bathroom rights, there's very few incidents of trans people hurting anyone in bathrooms. In fact, trans people are often beat up in bathrooms. But that doesn't cause a law to say straight people shouldn't be able to go to bathrooms, or cis, because people go, well, that's ridiculous. Exactly, it's ridiculous to not let anyone go to bathrooms. So as an ally, if you're not closer to the community as far as understanding those nuances, be really thoughtful about the propaganda that you hear and use your voice to push against it, including sexual orientation and gender identity and expression. Elliot Larson's civil rights is important. Voting to overturn the overturn of Roe v. Wade is important, because a lot of what Roe v. Wade, the use of the amendments for Roe v. Wade were the same use of the amendments of the 2003 Lawrence v. Texas, which allowed gay people to have sex, really. Did you know in 2002, it was illegal for any two people to have sex if they were of the same sex? It was illegal in 2002. In 2003, Lawrence v. Texas said, this is ridiculous. And they used a lot of the Roe v. Wade amendments and the same arguments to do that, which then if you overturn one, it is kind of easy to overturn the other, because they're both based off of some of the same things, some of the same amendments and constitutional rights. So be thoughtful about that one is always connected to the other.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that information. It's always, like you said, it's so important for people who have a platform, who have a voice to really speak out for the marginalized communities. I'm 100% behind that. A little bit more personally, how, and this is my last question, how should parents, or how can parents, and I'm saying parents because, you know, we see this a lot with our Black and Brown communities, how can parents support queer youth?
Yes, I think parents, well, first of all, did you know that if a parent or someone of a family or someone who loves a youth is supportive of a youth during their, whether they're trans or LGBTQ, that the support of parents actually create a higher life expectancy for youth? Because at least for trans people, 50% of trans people attempt suicide. That is a lot. So if you know 2 trans people, more than likely at least one of them have attempted suicide. And when you talk to them, a lot of them feel like they have no family, they have no support. Many of our families have turned against us, whether they came back or not. That initial feeling like family isn't there can really be detrimental. It can cause folks to be homeless, to do sex work, because if you're kicking them out at 15 or 16, where are they going to go? So one, I think be mindful of how support really looks and how it can really save someone's life. And so what that means is that there are going to be parents that may not agree or may not, all of that stuff. You raise your children to be adults, to be responsible adults, like you have to let them do that. And it's not your life, it's theirs. My mother didn't agree with my transition. I transitioned at 17. And my mother didn't agree with it. And I remember her saying, like, someone's going to kill you. And I said, if someone kills me, either you're going to be in my life or you're not, but that fact may not change. And she had to understand, like, you pushing people out. Most people who are LGBT and brown or Black have known our whole lives if our parents are going to be in our lives. So I was preparing since I was 8 that my parents weren't going to be in my life. So if you think that is the consequence, to be like, I'm going to scare them straight, it won't happen. What will happen is you may not be in their lives, and you're going to see them go through a lot of burden and trauma that they don't have to go through. So one, the trauma that you have, talk to someone about it. It's okay to see mental health therapists or figuring out P flags or other folks. Talk to them about it. But know that if your immediate focus is, I can't do it, you'll be surprised at what that can do and how it can affect your children. Also know, though, that there's a community that believes in chosen families. So I am a mother. I'm a chosen mother to 20 or so LGBT people because their parents refuse to be in their lives. So someone's going to love them, but it feels really good if someone who raised you or who was involved in your life loves you too.
Thank you so much, Leliana, for sharing your wisdom, your testimony, your experience with me and with the rest of the community. This is so important, not only this month, but every month. And so thank you again for coming and joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I did get a little notification that our agenda has slightly shifted. So I just am checking in with the team to see what is next on our agenda.
So I am going to welcome Alondra. She is the interim executive director of the Youth Development Resource Center here in Detroit. Also, we are proud, I don't actually know, are we members? We love the YDRC. So, and I'm going to say we're members. UNI is a member. So Alondra is going to share with us safe places for young people, fun places for young people, for this summer. So Alondra, I'm going to let you take it away because I know you are a busy woman and have to skedaddle in a little bit. So go ahead.
Thank you so much, Christine, for having me. As Christine said, my name is Alondra Tooney Jackson, and I'm the co-interim director at the Youth Development Resource Center in Detroit. And the Youth Development Resource Center, we are support an area of youth development professionals. We help to strengthen their individual and collective impact on youth throughout shared measurement, advocacy, quality improvement, and professional development. And one of the ways that we do this as it relates to advocacy and just making sure that our young people have a safe place for the summer is by having a platform called Discover Your Spark. And I'm not sure if you all can see my screen. Is my screen shared?
But for
It is
discovery,
not shared right now. So if you want to take a moment, or Deja can share it too.
okay,
What would you prefer, Deja to share, or do you?
I can share it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So not only has the YDRC been really instrumental in making sure that so many of the youth serving organizations continue to provide excellent services to young people. They've also been really important at the state level to advocate for organizations to, oh look, I can see me, to make sure that we have the resources that we need to do our very important work, and then also to make sure that parents and young people have a way to access these wonderful programs. So Alondra, take it away from here.
Thank you, Christine. So Discover Your Spark is a project of the Stillman Foundation and the United Way. And what we do with this platform, and the purpose of this platform, is to make sure that young people have a safe place for the summer. So we know out of school time is important, and we know that this sparks a new interest in our young people. It helps build a sense of belonging. It helps build academic motivation. It helps our young people have a space to be safe when their parents are at work. And it also helps our young people get connected to caring adults. So our Discover Your Spark platform is a great place for adults, caregivers, teachers, anyone who is interacting with a young person to go to learn about what we have to offer in the city of Detroit in the Tri-County area. So we have programs for ages K through high school, pre-K through high school. Over 200 programs are listed, and most of these programs are free to low cost. Our activities range from sports, arts, math, science, STEM, dance, anything that your young person might be interested in is listed on that program. Like I said, we have providers in Wayne, Oakland, Macomb County, and they are free and low cost. Now I'm going to give you a quick overview of how to search for the program, some of the filters that might be on there. So if you look at my screen, you can see that if you go to our program finder, you can search by location. So you can put in your zip code. I am from the east side of Detroit, so I'll be 48224. I could put that in there and it can show me what programs are listed. I can also sort by type. So I can say, hey, I want to look up STEM, or hey, I want to look up arts and crafts, or hey, I want to look up literacy. So you can also filter by type. You can look at, is it a summer program for your entire summer? Is it a part-time program that go once a week? We can look at the days of the week. There are a number of ways you can search for summer programming. I do want to say that when you do search, it prompts you to then go to register online. So when you go to the register online tab, it is going to prompt you to the provider's website, and that then will give you further instructions on what to do for registering for your young person. We do want to make sure that when your young people are in summer programming, some things to look for is to make sure that it's safe, it's supportive, and it fosters skill building. So when we say safe, we mean that it's emotionally safe, physically safe. So some questions you might ask the providers is, hey, how do you make sure your students are in and out the building? How do you track attendance? Or what do you do to nurture my young person? Supportive. We want to make sure that our young people are involved in the process of actually in their program. So how are they included in the program? What activities do you have to make sure that my young person is included? And then skill building. We know with COVID, we know with the summertime that we have had some summer loss, some academic loss. So what are you doing to make sure that these programs are impacting my young person academically? So that was a quick, my 5-minute overview of Discover Your Spark. We also list providers. So if you do have a summer programming or after school programming is not limited to after school, we do, we fill this on an ongoing basis. All of the programs that are on there are current and up to date. So if you do have any after school summer programming, and you want to be listed, just let us know. My email address is alondra@detroitydrc.org. Or you can go to our website, or you can follow us on social media. That was my quick elevator speech.
Thank you so much, Alondra. This was great. And families, if you're still looking for something, as I am, I I forgot in February that you actually need to start to enroll your kids in summer programs. It looks like there's quite a few things that are available in August. So, so please go to Discover Your Spark and ask us all the questions that Alondra has suggested that you ask, because we want to make sure that we're providing the very best we can for our young people in the city. So thank you so much, Alondra, for taking your time. I know you have a hard stop at 1, so thank you, thank you. And I am now going to pass the mic back over to Nikki, I believe, to close us out. And I'm going to head out. I actually also have a hard stop at 1. It's always a pleasure to be here with you all. Have a wonderful, beautiful weekend, a wonderful holiday. See ya.
Thank you so much, Christine. Thank you. As she said, I am going to be the one to wrap us up today. But to start off the closing announcements, I wanted to introduce Molly Sweeney from 482 Forward for the state budget announcement. Molly, are you ready for us?
Yeah, I'm going to be really brief because I know we're over time. We'll be able to give folks a broader update on the budget later today. What we know is that the state legislature is voting on our budget today. They're trying to get it finished, especially for K-12 schools. This will impact COVID and health centers. We're hearing that there'll be an increase in per pupil for education and potentially an increase for special education, but we'll keep you updated and give you an update at our July 14th meeting on the full budget breakdown. So Nikki, that's my quick update. I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, thank you. And I just have 2 closing announcements from Detroit Public Television. The first one being that they are planning to host, Detroit is planning to host a Future of Work Town Hall. It's Michigan Redesigned, about Michigan's design industry, notable Detroit brands, and how to break into a career design. That's on July 13th at 12 noon on One Detroit's Facebook page and Detroit Public Television YouTube channel. The second announcement that I have is Michigan Learning Channel has a free live weekly virtual event for kids this summer. You can join the lovable robot puppet Wymie and his friends as they discover more about the weekly theme. Wymie needs your help to write stories. And so give Wymie your favorite words and ideas in the comments and watch as he incorporates them into a series of songs in real time. Your ideas may even be featured in episodes of Wymie's Words on PBS. The episodes take place from June 21st to August 9th at 4 p.m. And that concludes our town hall for today. As always, thank you for joining in and listening to all these really important announcements. Thank you to all of our partners, and we will see you again soon.